The reading is from Hebrews chapter 11, verses 1 to 12. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. By faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. By faith, he was commended as righteous when God spoke well of his offerings. And by faith, Abel still speaks, even though he is dead. By faith, Enoch was taken from this life, so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. By faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, he obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land. Like a stranger in a foreign country, he lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And so from this one man, and he as good as dead, came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. This is the word of the Lord.
My name is Lynn. If I've not met you before, I'm one of the residential team here at Harn Hill. I'm married to Steve, who's been leading worship with us today. So if I've not met you before, really lovely to have such a good number of you here this morning. It's so lovely to see our numbers growing week by week. If you were in one of my intergenerational services, for which you're probably all very relieved that you're not, I might get you to do something interactive, although to be fair, there's quite a lot of you here this morning. But I'm not going to suggest it now, okay, because we haven't got time. But I might suggest you to make a line from where Steve is standing down to the other end of the barn right here. And I would ask you, on a scale of 1 to 10, this being 1 down here and 10 being where Steve stands, if you'd like to rearrange yourself according to where you think your level of faith is. So if you think it wasn't very much, you could go down towards that end. And if you think it was very strong and very, you're all going out, you might move up towards Steve. And it'll be just interesting to see where people put themselves. I might just give you a minute just to think about that, where you might go on a scale of 1 to 10. What's your faith? I just want to reassure you, if I was actually doing an intergenerational service, I wouldn't ask you to do that. I might ask you to line up, but I'd probably only be asking about which month you were born in, or in high order or something. I don't want you not to, come to one of my services because you're worried I'm going to ask difficult questions. So I wonder where you would go and stand, where you think your faith is. What kind of faith do you have? I'm guessing most of us actually would be about the middle. And it might change as well, depending on where we were at the time, what sort of season of life we were in. Sometimes we feel our faith is much stronger, so we might head up towards that end. Sometimes we feel it's not quite as strong and we're feeling a bit fragile about things, so we might head down to that end. Today's reading, as you'll have noticed, is all about faith. The commended faith of some of the Old Testament heroes. We are encouraged to acknowledge them and to be inspired by them, by their levels of faith. Although maybe we react in different ways. Sometimes we're inspired by that when we hear great stories of people's faith and we go, oh, wow, aren't they amazing? These real giants of faith that, really inspire to be like them. Although on some occasions we might be a little overwhelmed and think, oh my goodness, I could never be like that. They were so amazing and I'm just so ordinary. And it can feel a bit demoralising in some ways. But I'm going to spend a few minutes exploring the idea of faith. And let's face it, it's quite a big topic. I may only be skimming the surface, but let's see how we get on. What is faith? The first verse of the reading from Hebrews helpfully explains. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. So faith is something about our trust and belief in things that we cannot see, that are invisible to us. No wonder many of us find faith a bit of a challenge. We don't always find it easy to believe in things we can see, let alone things we can't see. And, let's be honest, even the disciple Thomas had his doubts, so we're in good company if we don't always feel we have a super strong faith. It can feel that faith is a very passive thing, either something you have or you don't have. We might talk, perhaps you've heard it talk about somebody having a faith. Oh yeah, they've got a faith. I think they have a faith. Sounds a bit like something we own, doesn't it? One of our possessions, something we might carry around with us. Perhaps we keep it in our back pocket, get it out on a Sunday. Oh, I've got to get my faith out now. It's a Sunday morning. I'm going to church. Better get it out and just make sure it's okay. Dust it down a bit and see how that works out. Maybe you bring yours out on a Friday as well. It's great. Really good, twice a week. I jest. Faith, then, we can hear, can't we, that comment about, I have a faith. Somebody has a faith. So maybe faith, then, is simply believing in God. Okay, it's a belief in God. Yeah, lots of people, in that case, could probably sign up to having a faith. Lots of people we talk to say, oh yeah, I believe in God. Yeah, there's something out there. They're quite big and I don't quite know much more about it, but I believe there's a God. Maybe it's just a set of beliefs or a doctrine that we ascribe to, we understand and we relate to. It's what we believe. Our faith is what we believe. But maybe there is more to it than this. I came across this great quote from an American theologian called Frederick Buechner, who says, faith is better understood as a verb rather than a noun, as a process than a possession. Faith is not being sure where you're going, but going anyway. A journey without maps. I loved that. That's so interesting. It implies that faith is more of an active state, something we live out. It demands action. Perhaps faith then is something that we do. Faith does, of course, involve belief. It's important that we know and understand what we believe in. It demands us to engage our intellect, maybe to wrestle or contend with scriptures, how we interpret them, those bits that we don't understand. But faith also requires trust. It involves us trusting in a loving Father, putting our hands in his. But faith is active. And we definitely saw this in the examples of the heroes of faith we read about in the reading. There's Abraham's faith. He was called to follow God and to leave his homeland, leave his place of security, his place of safety, and set out into the unknown. He had no idea where God was calling him. He had no idea where he was going to end up. Abraham's faith was active. It required him to do something, to leave his home and head out. Noah's was the same. He was tasked with building this enormous ship in the middle of a landlocked desert where rain was a rare event. That is totally ludicrous. Who would do that? Build a boat in the middle of a desert? But faith enabled him to be obedient. God said, can you build a boat? And Noah said, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay. He wasn't in the reading, but I thought too of Joseph. Joseph, another Old Testament hero, he is given the promise that one day he would be great. Just as a young man, he's given this promise, you are going to be a great man. But he had to suffer enslavement, forced imprisonment for several decades before he was finally appointed as Pharaoh's chancellor and God's word came true. It seems to me, therefore, that faith for these Old Testament heroes involved action. It required them to live out their faith in practical ways. And actually, for each one of these, there was a lot of patience involved. They had to wait a long time to see the fruition of what God had promised. It took years, many years. I wonder how long we think it's reasonable to wait for an answer to prayer. Maybe a week? Oh God, you haven't answered my prayer yet. It's been a week. Are you checking your watch? Maybe it's a month. A month's pretty reasonable, isn't it? Maybe you might even extend it to a year. I keep on praying. I'm going to have faith and believe. And, a year, Lord, come on. It's been a year. But these heroes of faith, they waited 10, 20, 30 years to see the promises fulfilled that God had told them. Their faith was amazing. So I wonder, is faith for us only grown when we get answers to prayer? Is that how we grow our faith? Is that how we mark it? Oh yeah, I got another answer there. Oh yeah, I think my faith could be a bit increased by that. That's really encouraging to see that answer happen. Well, as long as they're the right answers, the answers that we wanted and we were expecting, that's the important bit, isn't it? Otherwise it doesn't really count as an answer, does it? Oh, well, we'll see. What happens, though, when God doesn't seem to show up in the timing or ways that we expect him to? How does that affect our faith? In fact, how is our faith affected when we go through times of suffering and challenges? What does that look like for us? How would we react to that? I'm going to talk a little bit about this brilliant book. I've really loved this book. It's by Mags Duggan. It's called God Among the Ruins. And the book is a story, really, of how she had her faith built up during a very difficult time leading to bereavement and loss. But actually, it's a book about how to engage, how to grow your faith during times of challenge and during times of struggle. And she takes the reader through the prophet Habakkuk. You might know Habakkuk. It's got about three chapters in the Old Testament. He's quite difficult to find. You might need to look in the index because it's so small. Habakkuk is a prophet, and he starts, the beginning of his story, the beginning of his book, starts in a place where he is in complete despair. All around him, he sees wreckage and ruin. He sees injustice triumphing. He sees destruction. And he complains bitterly to God. What are you doing, Lord? There is nothing good here. It's all in ruins. Why is God allowing all this suffering? And Habakkuk really rages at him. He's really honest in his rages. But this book traces Habakkuk's journey from fear to faith. That's the name of a commentary by Martin Lloyd-Jones, From Fear to Faith. And incredibly, at the end of the book, we see Habakkuk praising God, singing of his joy, even though his circumstances haven't changed. He doesn't change his mind. He doesn't come to a place of joy and a place of thankfulness because his circumstances changed, because God answered his prayers. His faith grew through that situation, and he learnt to see God within it all. The wicked were still in charge, injustice still reigned. And Habakkuk's final words are, "The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to tread the heights," even though nothing has changed for his circumstances. And Max Duggan goes on to say, this transformation which took place in Habakkuk's life was the outcome of a process. It's that action again. He wasn't simply transported from grief to glory in the wave of a holy wand. There was no shortcut. There was no passing go on the spiritual monopoly board. There was no little ladder easing him up to a higher plane of maturity. This was just the ongoing journey of trust in God and transformation by God from a starting point he would never have willingly chosen. I wonder if that's a bit of our story. We're in a place where we wouldn't have chosen to start. But that's where we find ourselves, and God acknowledges where we are and meets us where we are. I'm intrigued as well as I read through the Gospels. Jesus never promises his disciples that the road they are to travel will be easy. He warns us it's going to be strewn with setbacks, obstacles, complications, difficulties, even downright opposition. And yet it's faith that enables us to travel that road. We might not be called to leave our homes like Abraham, to wander around Europe trying to find a place to settle. But it might involve an unexpected life journey, which we have no idea where it will take us. We might have no idea what the destination will be. And faith is about trusting in the Lord when there is silence, when disappointment litters our path, when we enter the valleys and there is no light, or we find ourselves on the long, demoralising path of the wilderness. But it's as we walk that, as we journey through that, and as we continue to seek God and to trust in him and to look to him, that our faith is built. And our faith also builds our understanding of who God is, his character, his love, his faithfulness, his steadfastness. It enables us to understand that character of God that otherwise we might miss. Faith enables us to wait patiently on God, trusting in his plans, his purposes for our lives, not expecting him to enact our scripts on our behalf, but trusting in his plans and purposes. And if we read these examples of faith throughout the Bible, rarely did things go to plan. There were always challenges and obstacles in the way. Things never turned out quite as people were expecting. And faith requires us then to step out, not knowing where we're going, not having any idea where we're going to end up, or how we're going to get there. But we get the opportunity to build our faith one step at a time, trusting the Lord, trusting in his promises, trusting that he will be with us. And actually, it's all those small moments when we've trusted in God for the small times that builds our foundations for when we need to trust in God for the more challenging times. Faith then needs to be built and nurtured. It's something that grows and develops. It's how we have the opportunity to dig into Jesus, to lean on him. Faith is built when we step out of our comfort zone into the landscape, the unknown landscape of his calling, setting off on that unknown journey. Faith is the greatest of journeys, inviting us to a life of flourishing and fulfillment in God's kingdom. Where will your faith take you today? Amen.